In this episode, we tackle a topic that sounds simple until you see how many ways it can go wrong. Defining who is responsible for what in security, especially when multiple internal teams and outside partners are involved. Beginners often imagine security as a single team that protects everything, but real organizations are built from many groups with different goals, different skills, and different pressures. Security succeeds when roles and responsibilities are clear enough that important tasks are owned, executed, and checked, even when people are busy or when a problem happens at the worst possible time. Security fails when everyone assumes someone else is handling it, or when responsibilities overlap so much that nothing truly gets done. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain why clarity matters, what good responsibility design looks like, and how to include third parties without losing control of risk. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A role is the set of functions a person or team is expected to perform, while a responsibility is a specific obligation to do something and to be accountable for the outcome. This difference matters because roles can be broad, but responsibilities must be specific enough that work can be assigned and verified. For example, a security operations role might include monitoring and response, but the responsibility might be to triage high-severity alerts within a target window and to escalate confirmed incidents to the right decision-makers. A system owner role might include keeping a system healthy, but the responsibility might be to ensure patching happens on schedule and that access is reviewed periodically. When responsibilities are vague, people cannot tell whether they are succeeding or failing, and it becomes easy to avoid hard work. Clear responsibilities create the foundation for measurable security performance and reliable execution under stress. A helpful way to think about responsibility and security is to follow the path of how a security outcome is produced. Take something like reducing vulnerability exposure on a critical system. Someone must know the system exists and why it matters, which usually means an asset owner and an inventory process. Someone must discover vulnerabilities, which might be a security team, a platform team, or a shared service. Someone must decide what to fix first, which requires risk-based prioritization and coordination. Someone must actually apply changes safely, which is often operations or engineering. Someone must verify the fix, which might be security or quality assurance, and someone must report status to leadership. If any link in that chain lacks ownership, the outcome becomes inconsistent, even if each team believes it is doing its part. Defining roles across internal teams starts with recognizing that security is not a single function, but a set of responsibilities distributed throughout the organization. A central security team often sets standards, monitors for threats, and helps coordinate response, but they rarely own every system or every change. Infrastructure teams often own networks and core services. Application teams own product code and services. Operations teams own availability and deployment processes, and identity teams own access platforms and authentication methods. Governance and risk teams often manage policy, risk reporting, and required assessments. Legal, privacy, and procurement influence third-party relationships and contractual obligations. Clear security roles define where security provides guidance and oversight, where security provides direct operational execution, and where other teams own execution with security validation. Without this clarity, security becomes overloaded and blamed for outcomes it cannot directly control. A common misconception is that assigning responsibility is mostly about writing policies. Policies help, but they do not automatically create ownership. Ownership becomes real when responsibilities are embedded into routine workflows, performance expectations, and decision paths. For example, if an application team is responsible for fixing certain vulnerabilities, the organization must also give that team enough authority to schedule changes and enough support to test and deploy fixes safely. If the security team is responsible for incident coordination, it must have defined escalation paths and the authority to convene stakeholders quickly. Responsibility without authority creates frustration and slow execution. Authority without responsibility creates unmanaged risk. Good role definition balances both so people can actually deliver outcomes. Another key concept is separating who does the work from who is accountable for the result. In many cases, a team will perform tasks on behalf of another team, but accountability remains with the owner of the system or process. For example, a security team might run vulnerability scans and provide findings, but the system owner is accountable for remediation because they control the system. A third-party provider might manage a service, but the organization remains accountable for the risk because the organization is still responsible for protecting its data and operations. This separation matters because it prevents a dangerous kind of outsourcing of responsibility, where everyone assumes the vendor is handling security completely. You can outsource tasks, you can buy services, and you can share execution, but you cannot outsource accountability for your outcomes. When third parties enter the picture, the need for clear responsibilities becomes even more urgent. Third parties can include cloud service providers, software vendors, managed service providers, consultants, and partners that connect to your systems or handle your data. Each relationship creates a shared responsibility situation, even if the contract does not use that phrase. The organization needs to define what the third party will do, what the organization will do, and how security expectations will be verified. This includes responsibilities like access control, monitoring, incident notification, vulnerability management, and data handling practices. It also includes responsibilities for changes, because many security problems appear when a vendor changes something and the organization does not notice or cannot evaluate the impact quickly. Clear responsibility design creates a predictable way to manage these relationships without constant confusion. One of the most important beginner insights is that third-party security is not just a pre-contract checklist, because risk changes after the contract is signed. Vendors change their products. The organization changes how it uses them. New integrations are added, and new threats emerge. So responsibilities should include ongoing activities like periodic review of vendor access, confirmation that key controls remain in place, and clear incident communication procedures. It should also include the ability to respond when something goes wrong, such as knowing who to contact, what evidence can be provided, and what timelines are expected. If the organization does not define these responsibilities up front, it will scramble during an incident, which increases impact and delays recovery. The goal is to build a working relationship where security expectations are part of normal operations, not an afterthought. Within the organization, role clarity also reduces friction during incidents. Incidents are stressful, and stress makes people revert to assumptions. If responsibilities are unclear, teams may argue about who is supposed to act, who is allowed to disconnect a system, who can approve emergency changes, and who should communicate with leadership. Those delays can significantly increase damage. Clear responsibilities define who leads coordination, who makes key decisions, who provides technical action, and who communicates status externally and internally. They also define what information must be collected and who is responsible for evidence preservation. When roles are clear, people can focus on solving the problem rather than negotiating authority while the incident spreads. Defining responsibilities across teams is also how you prevent silent gaps, which are tasks nobody realizes are not being done. For example, if nobody owns periodic access review, privileged accounts can accumulate and remain active long after they are needed. If nobody owns asset inventory accuracy, unknown systems can exist without monitoring or patching. If nobody owns logging requirements for critical systems, detection becomes weak and incident investigations become slow. These gaps are rarely malicious. They are usually the result of unclear boundaries and assumptions. Clear responsibility definition makes these tasks visible and assignable. Once a responsibility is explicit, it can be measured, improved, and audited in a healthy way. Finally, good role design avoids creating security responsibilities that are impossible to execute. It is tempting to define responsibilities in a way that sounds perfect, such as requiring every system to meet every standard immediately. In real organizations, that can cause the system to be ignored because it feels unrealistic. A better approach is to define responsibilities that are achievable, risk-based, and tied to critical assets first. Over time, as the organization matures, responsibilities can expand and become more rigorous. This approach respects the fact that people have competing priorities and that security must be built into real workflows. Clarity does not mean harshness. It means making the path to secure behavior understandable and executable. When roles and responsibilities are defined well, security becomes a coordinated team sport rather than a lonely department. Work gets done because ownership is clear, authority is aligned, and third-party obligations are understood and verified. Incidents are handled faster because escalation paths and decision rights are not debated in the moment. Risk posture improves because routine tasks like patching, access review, logging, and change evaluation are consistently owned rather than occasionally remembered. The organization does not need perfect people to get better security. It needs clear expectations and reliable accountability. That is why defining roles and responsibilities across teams and third parties is one of the most powerful steps a security leader can take.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.